Hello and welcome everyone. Really looking forward to today's webinar. Those of you that know me know this is one of my favorite topics. I love this one. And of course, it is so incredibly significant to each and every one of us as coaches. Now, many of you in signing up had a chance to enter questions. You put in this was going to be a great opportunity to review, etc. And yes, that is the case. You will see some slides that you've seen in your class. You'll see some other stuff as well. So we got lots of good information. For those of you that are asking already, the access after the fact, what happens is I will send an email to everyone that registered for the program and give you a link to the recording on our YouTube channel so you can go back and check it out again. For those of you that had specific questions, I think we've done a great job of building them into our content today. So look for that information. And then, of course, you're going to have the option of asking questions as we go. We can do that in two ways. So first, I've got a couple of hands up, so I'm putting your hands down right now. Everybody's hand is down. If you want to come on live, you can raise your hand and I can unmute you individually and you can ask your question. Or, as many often prefer, you can also type it into the question panel. I've got that open. I'm monitoring it as we go through. So let's get started. What is the conversation? First off, the intention here is, number one, recognizing the importance of coaching language, and then number two, really motivating you so you use coaching language. Of course, that's what we want with all of our coaches. Now, what's the actual agenda? We're going to start out with some definitions. Then we will talk about the impact of language and examples of language. We're going to discuss how being positive is actually inspiring. Being proactive is motivating. We'll talk about how to learn coaching language, and then of course share some resources and ideally have time for additional Q&A at the end. So diving into the definitions, and I am sure many of you have already seen this definition. It comes from the International Coach Federation. I think most of you are familiar with the International Coach Federation, and bottom line, they are the gold standard in terms of coaching. That is as close as we come to self-regulation in coaching. And the definition from them, whether it's executive, career, business, life, or health coaching, is that it is a strategic partnership. And what that means to all of us is, when we say partnership, the coach is not the one coming in with the answers and the expertise. The coach is coming in with a process and with coaching competencies. And then it goes on. The coach empowers the client. And the client is the one who clarifies their goals, creates their action plans, moves past obstacles, and achieves what the client chooses. So great definition, and really sets up what we're all about as coaches. Now, another definition, that word empower that you saw in the ICF definition. What is it? To invest with power, to equip or supply with an ability. And of course, coming into coaching, our premise is, hey, the client is their own best expert. They have the ability. So our role in coaching is to really put them in the driver's seat as far as using what they have, using that ability. Now let's have a definition for positive language. Here we are talking about coaching language is positive, it's proactive. What is positive language? Number one, it's good or useful. Instead of giving the negative, it says what is wanted. It expresses support, approval, or agreement. It encourages or empowers. That is positive language. Now let's talk proactive language. What is proactive language? It's about moving forward, It's a belief in possibilities, and it's intentional. Now, think about language as a competency, and the ICF identifies direct communication as a coaching competency, clear, direct language. And what they say is that it is the ability to communicate effectively during coaching sessions and to use language that has the greatest, check out this word, positive impact on the client. Love that. So pull all of that together. What exactly is coaching language? Coaching language is positive. It is empowering. It is supportive. It's encouraging. It's clear and direct. It is succinct, specific, and proactive. So when we talk about positive and proactive language being coaching language, right on track. Now I want to give you a great example of using coaching language. Last year in August, the ICF put out their updated Code of Ethics. They review it every 3 years and they update it. Well, when they reviewed it and updated it, here's what they said about that. They recommended revisions intended to transform it from a document prescribing what not to do, negative or limiting, to a document highlighting how to be as an ICF member and or credential holder. So in other words, they literally rewrote the Code of Ethics so that it is in coaching language. And that was very intentional on their part. And I think that's really a significant message to all of us, how important coaching language is. So what's the challenge for you, for everyone? It's very simply awareness. What is that positive language? Are you using it? And what's the difference? What's the impact? So we want that awareness of language. Now, let's dig into it. What's the impact of it? Well, bottom line, brain function increases. One of my favorite conferences each year is the Science of Coaching conference that the International Coach Federation puts on. And I forever am enthralled by brain scans that were shown at that conference and showing the difference in brain activity based on language. And when the language is negative, brain activity shuts down, it decreases. When language is positive, it increases. So many coaches are very intentional, for example, about starting a coaching session with a positive conversation to increase the brain function. And with the brain function being increased, thinking is actually clearer. Decision making is enhanced and motivation is greater. Language is an amazing, powerful tool that we all have. When I did the chapter for last year's book on coaching perspectives, it was all about language, and it gave you a lot of tips on where you can find more information. I'm going to share a few things here. I hope you continue looking and researching, because when you think about knowing how important this is, recognizing the power of this, a lot of it is going to be based on the research and the facts. So first off, what is the impact of language? Work911.com says this: using positive language tends to reduce conflict, improve communication, reduce defensiveness in others, and helps, check this out, portray the speaker or writer as credible and respectable. Okay, wow. When you use positive language, you are perceived as more credible and respectable. Is that worthwhile? Of course it is. Now here's another one. And this comes from psychiatrist Reitman. And here's what he said. It takes the average person almost twice as long to understand a sentence that uses a negative approach than it does to understand a positive sentence. Wow. Twice as long to process it based on it using negative. What does that say to us? In coaching conversation, is that clear and direct? Our competency? Of course not. So positive language makes a difference. Here's another one. edweek.org. A transformational coach pays close attention to the words he or she uses, as well as the words that the coachee uses. Our words offer great insight into our thoughts, beliefs, and feelings. They are like little windows into who we are and where we are. Okay, those of you that said, hey, you wanted the review here, guess what? We talked about this a lot, didn't we? Every time we do the class, we're saying, okay, here's language, and we've got these examples and ways of recognizing and identifying it and working with it. And then when you do your coaching practicum, what are we doing? We're challenging you and pushing you with that positive language approach, and even challenging you and pushing you to challenge your client if they use negative language. And there's a reason for it. It makes a difference. And just like coaching makes a difference in what happens for the client, language makes a difference in terms of the effectiveness of your coaching. And I'm confident most of you have seen these statistics. The most often cited statistic in terms of ROI on coaching is probably the Manchester Inc. I'll say Metrics Global has a statistic that's pretty close to that. And you've probably seen the Fortune magazine that looks at a number of studies and does an average of them. There's a huge return on investment for coaching. Now, is all coaching going to get that ROI? Of course not. Our ideal is yes. What does it take? Well, in part, your coaching language is going to make a difference. If you're going to be effective as a coach, language is going to change how effective you are. The improvement when you do training is 22%. When you combine training with coaching, it's 88%. And once again, it's about that positive, proactive language. You see, when you do a training, you're giving information. When you add the coaching, you are proactively working with the client in terms of how they're applying the information they gain from the training. So once again, the reason coaching is so powerful in part is because of coaching language. So let's dive in to some specific examples. And this is where those of you who have taken the program are going to be remembering, oh yeah, we covered that in class. Now here's what I'm going to ask you all to do. I have too many people to unmute you, and I apologize for that. It'd be so fun because there's some great people here. What I want to ask you to do is to simply think. I'm going to read a list of words and I want you to react. What is your reaction? How are you feeling? What are you thinking when you hear these phrases? We did something similar in class. Actually, you probably were responding to these phrases. So I'm going to start with some negative phrases. You can look at them on the screen if you want, or you can close your eyes and just listen and think about your reaction. If I say to you, don't feel that way. I told you. You. Always. Never. You know. I know. But. However. Why? I understand. What's wrong with you? You need to. You should. Okay. How you feeling? And I'm getting comments in and reactions in the question panel. This is awesome. So I'm going to share. Here's a really good one because it's similar to what a lot of you are saying. Disempowering, demeaning, not concerned. Yeah, this is negative language. It shuts people down. It turns them off. And then, of course, in class, what we did is said, okay, so if that's the negative language, where do you go instead? So let's move into things to say, how to replace that negative language. Do say, it seems you think. It seems you feel. Given this barrier, what will work? What you are saying makes sense. I'm hearing how you feel. I think if I were in that position, I would have felt the same way. Here's what I've found out. Let's look at options. What do you think? What is your process to find options? So this is examples of language that works, that engages people. And I'm getting those words. You're empowering, yes. You're engaging, yes. And back to, we're partnering here. We really are collaborating with the client when we use this language. So very, very significant in terms of the difference. Now think about it. If you're working with someone, what language do you want them using with you? And if you're working with them in that professional capacity, yeah, absolutely. This is the kind of language you want. What does that mean to you in terms of you coaching someone else? It means, yeah, give them the same respect. Give them the positive, proactive language. All right, let's do another one. And again, this comes from one of your classes. So ideally, simply close your eyes wherever you are if you can, unless you're driving. Don't close your eyes if you're driving. All right, thank you. So close your eyes and simply feel this list of words. And we'll do the same thing. We'll do a list of negative and then a list of positive. So if I say these words, how does it feel? Don't, doesn't, try, can't, won't, but, however, might, could, should, would, always, never, need to. Oh, ouch. Yes, these are painful words. You hear them and you feel like it's dragging you down. It's a bummer. It's depressing. Yes, great comments in the panel there. So think also, and we talked about this in class, if you know someone that you label as being a toxic person, this is their language. These are words they use all the time. And now let's switch gears and go the other direction. Again, close your eyes and simply feel the impact of these words. Now, because, easily, naturally, aware, experience, realize, expand, create, opportunity, imagine, brilliant, enlighten, focus, visualize, peaceful, tranquil, tantalizing, balance, calm. And what's the difference? How did those words feel? Again, back to that, yeah, empowered again, engaged again. It feels positive, yes, refreshing, uplifting, awesome. So big, big difference. And just as we said, okay, if you have someone who's toxic, they use those poison words. When you know someone that you call charismatic, they use this language. Now, of course, there's going to be a significant nuance to this, everyone. If we say, okay, yeah, I get it. This coaching language really is important. It does make a difference. I have to use it when I'm coaching. Okay, wait a minute. Are you going to change your language only when you're coaching? Or are you going to create a new habit of positive, proactive language that you use all the time? Because bottom line, it's pretty tough to consistently change your language only for coaching sessions. It gets a lot easier when you make this a new way of being, a new way of speaking with others. And even outside of those coaching sessions, are you better served? Are the people you are talking with better served? Of course. Use the positive, proactive language. Choose it as a habit. Be intentional about that. Now, positive language, bottom line, is inspiring. So think back to what our competency is and what the ICF is telling us about using communication. And they want us to have the greatest positive impact on the client. Well, how do we do that? We use positive language. We ask questions of our clients so that they also use positive language. So incredibly important. So when you have a client that uses the words on that poison word list, ask them a question so that they change it. Let's see. Oh, great comment. I'm going to read this one to you. So there's a lot of feedback, by the way, coming in. There's a ton of you on this call. So this is a good one to share because it really captures it. We call anything negative, words or behaviors, chain of pain. And then positive is the flow of well-being. Easy for kids to remember too, because they will, and then they'll use it with their friends. That's awesome. Chain of pain versus flow of well-being. Which one do you want? It seems like a no-brainer, right? All right. So positive language is inspiring. And again, think about it. Simply reflect on conversations you've had with people. When they use positive language, you are inspired. Proactive language is motivating. Being proactive motivates follow through. And coaching is intended to create meaningful change, to be proactive. And so what does that mean? It means that positive proactive language is absolutely essential and core to what we do as coaches. So then, of course, the challenge becomes, how do you learn coaching language? And of course, the obvious answer, first off, is coach training. And as many of you know, when you do the coach training class, you get those recordings of your training class. Go back to them. Go back and listen again. Go back and review your materials. What's the best way to really learn something? Do you get it one time? You're all here. You're going, hey, I want a good review. Yes. Review the information. You've got it. Go back to it. Revisit it until it becomes a habit for you. Another great way to learn it is do the research on language, because the bottom line is when you start researching it, you dig into it, you're going to go, oh, wow, yeah, oh, okay, so this isn't just people saying something, this is real. The positive language makes a difference. It has an impact on brain function, on people taking action and following through. And so as a coach, it's core to what we do. Another great tool are positive affirmations. A lot of coaches use those. And what's ironic is sometimes we say, oh, well, gosh, I'm not sure, or, oh, well, I just haven't gotten around to it. Okay, wait a minute. If you have a client that says to you, hey, I'm just not sure, or I haven't gotten around to it, what are you doing as a coach? You're holding them accountable. Okay, are you going to hold yourself accountable? How are you doing that? So affirmations are a fabulous tool in terms of positive language, because what it does is remind you constantly of the positive language. Think about it. We shared in class one of the statistics. Jack Canfield found that from the time you are 11, 77% of the information you process is negative. What does that mean? Okay, everywhere you go, the conversations, what you see on billboards, what you see on TV, what you read, 77% negative. Oh, wow. So what are you going to do? You can live in that, or you can start changing it intentionally. And how do you change it intentionally? Yeah, training, research, and using affirmations. So lots of great opportunity there. Let's see, another study. I'll share, or another comment, I'll share this one. There are many scientific studies, see, right there, proving what we say creates new neural pathways in our brain. So we can actually rewire our brain. Yeah. Affirmations. That's one way of doing it. And then you're citing one person that talks about it is Dr. Dispenza. We actually can recondition ourselves. And yeah, I know some of you are going, yeah, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. And I'm going to go, baloney, I'm an old dog. I'm still learning new tricks. You can too, right? And then of course, classes like this one. There are a lot of great training programs out there that teach coaching language. All right, so hopefully, and I am getting the comments that you are inspired. Hopefully everybody's inspired. You recognize the significance of coaching language. Now we want to get into how to use it. So you've got the information if you took the class. We're going to go back into some of that, and we're going to talk about really using the coaching language. Okay. First off, when we start with the information on communication and specifically move into that competency of clear, direct language, we start with this slide. And one of the things we ask everybody, okay, imagine back in the day when my kids were teenagers and I'm mom and yeah, I know it's been a while. So imagine me saying to my teenager, you need to go clean your room. You need to do this, and I expect this, and it better be like this, and you've got to get it done by this time. And as I'm saying all of this to my child, how much are they actually hearing? Yeah, nothing, right? Charlie Brown's teacher, blah, blah, blah. They're not processing that. So one of the things we talk about in coaching is stop telling. It's not doing you any good anyway. And instead, start asking. And guess what happens when you start asking? We continued this thought with the idea of instead of focusing on the problem, we're focusing on the solution. When you're asking questions, they're solution-focused questions. And when you ask questions that are solution-focused, you are literally creating a shift into positive language. This is one of the ways we do it. And we talked about that. Now here's another one. In your training, we said, okay, yeah, coaching is about focusing forward. So the analogy we had is we talked about Jeff Keith, who when he was very young lost a leg to cancer and decided he wanted to raise money. And he was going to raise money by running across the country and getting sponsorships. So we said, okay, now imagine yourself in that position. You're going to run across the country, and some of the time you're going to be out in the middle of nowhere. And if you're out in the middle of nowhere, do you want some sort of support or help or backup? And so we talked about, okay, you're going to have that car driving along behind you. And that's your support, your backup. And then what happens is as you're running down the highway, you're thinking, oh, this is good. If I trip and fall, they're right behind me. If there's an emergency, they're right behind me. If I have a problem, they're right behind me. And what are you thinking about? You're thinking about the if you have a problem, borrowing trouble before you even have it, right? And in addition to that, you're thinking about what's behind you, what you're running away from, what you don't want. And so we said, instead, imagine having that car out in front of you and you're running toward it. And we said, okay, they go a mile down the road and you're running toward it. And what are you thinking about? You're thinking about, okay, my goal right now is this next mile. And then when I get there, I'll go the next one. And then when I get there, I'll be ready for the next one. And as you're running down, you're thinking about where you're going, about achieving that goal, about moving forward, advancing yourself. And we talked about that in class. Okay, so if you have a client and you say, what do you want? The client says, oh, I don't want to be so stressed. I don't want to work so many hours. I don't want to be overwhelmed all the time. I don't want a boss who's so mean or micromanaging or whatever else it is. And guess what? They're all hung up and trapped in that negative. They're focused on the problem. They're focused on what they do not want. Is that doing them any good? So what do we do as coaches? We say, what do you want? If you don't want to be stressed, what do you want to be instead? Oh, well, I want to be relaxed. I want to be balanced, or however they want to say that. Okay, now we're shifting them into that positive language. And we say, okay, how many hours do you want to work? Okay, what kind of a boss do you want to have? And you're focusing the client on what they're moving toward. That's our job as a coach. And bottom line, that's even an ethical concern if we're focusing anywhere else, because coaching is about what they're moving toward. That's our job, that's our role. And when we talk about what we're moving toward, gee, let's take the odds on this one. You think it's something that's positive and proactive? Yeah, chances are. How many people want to move toward the negative? So we're moving toward, and that means in that process, you're creating that shift into the positive, proactive language. Now, another example that we talked about in class is source of motivation. And we talked about whether somebody is internally motivated or externally motivated. Now, if somebody is externally motivated, you get a short-term result. External motivation means they're doing something for someone else or to avoid a consequence. So an example I often use, some of you probably have heard this. Let's combine both toward and source of motivation here. Let's say you say, Kathy, what do you want? And I say, oh, well, I want to lose weight. And in your mind, you go, okay, that's away from, that's what you don't want. Okay, so Kathy, how much do you want to weigh? Now you got me moving towards something. Oh, I want to weigh 100 pounds or whatever it is. Okay, great. Now you know the goal, what I'm moving toward. And then you say to me, Kathy, what does it mean to you to reach that weight goal? Oh, well, then my husband won't think I'm so fat, or whatever else it is. Well, guess what? That's external motivation. And I'm less likely to follow through when I'm doing it for someone else or to avoid a consequence. Think about it. When you have people at work and they have a project to complete and you say, what does it mean to you to complete that? Oh, well, then my boss won't yell at me. That's external motivation. You're going to get a short-term result. What does it mean to you personally to complete it? Oh, well, it'll feel good. Yeah, being able to check that off, I like that. Oh, it'll look good on my resume. Well, I'm going to learn some skills in the process here. So there's all kinds of reasons that it's meaningful to them individually to complete it, to do it. And when people identify their internal motivation, that's how you get a long-term result. And guess what? Chances are, yeah, you got it. It's going to be positive. Internal motivation is going to be positive and proactive in terms of achieving what they want. Now, we also talked about empowering ownership, and we actually are using the word proactive. And one of the great examples many of you are familiar with is Stephen Covey in the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And he talks about be proactive. Okay, think about it. You know people who are reactive. And one of the examples we often use in class is we say, okay, what do you want? Somebody, oh, I want to get promoted. Okay, great. What are you going to do to get there? Oh, well, in 3 months I have my review. And they're being reactive. They're waiting for someone else or for something else to happen. That's reactive. And guess what? They're going to get stuck. And they're going to get stuck and it's going to be negative. So what do we do as coaches? We shift them to the proactive. We say, okay, now between now and the time you have your review, what can you do to increase the likelihood of getting that promotion? What is possible for you? And we shift them into being proactive. So we know that coaching is about moving forward. And yes, it does call for being proactive, initiating the action. So another big one, and it really pulls together all of this. When a client is saying what they don't want, ask for what they do want. Ask for their internal motivation for change, and ask what they can do. So as coaches, this is the focus. This is how we approach it. We're moving the clients toward what they do want. We're exploring their internal motivation and how they're going to be proactive about it. All right. What does this mean for you? What do you do? Well, think about it. What will you do? And please, I hope some of you will type something in the panel. Love to hear what this is motivating you to do, this awareness of the power of your language and the awareness of the techniques for developing that positive language. Because in the end, it's about you applying those techniques and applying them consistently and practicing it. So ideally, research it. Some of you have shared some of the different research and the different studies on this. I mentioned the chapter in Coaching Perspectives 5 that I wrote. It's on coaching language, and there's some great places mentioned in there for you to go research and get more information. Do your homework on this, because when you research it, you get it. You see the facts. So excellent. Now, another one, the training. So if you've done coach training, go back and review it. How are you applying it? How do you want to apply it? What else are you going to do? And I love this. I'm getting comments in here. So I'm going to share some of these that you're putting in. Ask questions to get the coachee to identify internal motivation. Okay, that resonated with somebody. Another one, oh my gosh, they're going so fast. Let me see if I can keep up. I'm going to keep the message from the last slide as a reminder in my office. Awesome. Let's see, awareness is key in our lives, and repetition during the day to change our language. Yes, repetition, repetition, repetition. And then you went on to say commitment to doing this will get you there. Another one, gather more information and set up regular sources for this information, both for training others and for yourself. Excellent. Another comment that this is a great reminder. Plan to start with a positive comment each time I start a coaching session and keep the positive words in front of me at each session. So this is awesome. Excellent. Yes. And then, of course, another great thing is affirmations for yourself. Whether it's a full-blown recording, whether it's one-sentence statements you put out, whether it's making sure you're bringing them up in conversations, use the affirmations for yourself. So awesome. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to go through some resources, and then for those of you that are still here, we're going to shift it over to a pure Q&A session. You can ask whatever you want. We can even role play some conversations. We can go wherever you want to go, so be thinking about what you want to do with the time we're going to have. So first off, in terms of resources, yes, please, absolutely, the Center for Coaching Certification is a resource. The training at each of the levels that's offered is going to support your learning and applying positive language as a coach. Then, of course, for those of you who want to coach or want to have a coaching program, the Center for Coaching Solutions is a resource. Now, in addition to that, one of you made the comment about finding different resources and signing up and having those and accessing those. So we've got lots of that. First off, we have a blog. New blog posts every week, a couple of them every week. We also have the book series, and this Coaching Perspective series, every book is totally different and unique, and the chapters are written by graduates of the program. And yes, we are very cognizant of using coaching language in these chapters. So that's a part of it. And these are a fabulous resource. I'm going to brag shamelessly. I had somebody recently say, wow, I can't believe I hadn't read these already. These are really good. So yes, get into those. And then, of course, these free webinars that we do every month, that's another resource. We do want to be available to you if you want to call or email, ask a quick question. And then, of course, we also outsource. We do consulting in terms of helping people start and run a coaching program. We provide the training, and we also provide coaches, so where you want to coach. For those of you that are looking at this, okay, now what do I do? Well, do want to make myself available if you want to have a one-on-one conversation. That's an option for you. Definitely it's about choosing your resources, planning your process, implementing your strategy, and achieving the results. So let's shift in to our Q&A time. And let's see, I've got the first one here. If a client is continually blaming others for their predicament, what are some positive language techniques to use? Love it. Comes up a lot, right? So let's think about this. I'm having a conversation with the client and, oh, well, this person, that, and that. I'm simply going to interrupt and say, I'm going to ask you a question. Given that that person isn't here and we're the ones that are here, let's talk about what you do control. What is possible for you to do? And so right there, I've said, you know, whatever other people do, this is about what you control and what is possible for you to do. Another way of approaching that may be to say, okay, so that's what the other person is doing. What's a way for you to respond to that person and start shifting it toward what you want it to be? Or exploring, what are different options for you to move forward? So challenge them by asking questions that are focused on them. Hopefully that's helping. I'm getting lots of great comments. This is your time, everybody. What are your questions? And yes, if you do want to come live, you can come live. We can role play. We can take questions, whatever you want to do. So what else do you want to know? I'm getting lots of quiet out there. All right, I'm going to challenge all of you. Oh, I do have a hand up. I'm going to get this person on live. So, Tracy, I've unmuted you. You've got yourself muted. Go ahead and click to unmute yourself and come on in.
Hi.
Hi, Tracy.
Since getting my coaching, I have been trying to continually improve my positive language and keeping that toward focus. I was hoping that others might have some ideas of how you listen to yourself to catch those times when you're not using positive language.
Really good point. So everyone, Tracy's question, how do you listen to yourself so that you hear it when your language is other than positive and you can catch it and change it? And so hopefully, Tracy, will get some people typing in comments in the meantime. A couple of things. First off, those positive affirmations help create that positive language. So listening to those, seeing those, etc., is going to help create that habit. Another thing that I've had people do is say to those around them that are close to them, hey, I really want to work on this and I'm going to ask you a favor. If I say something that is negative, or you can even give them examples, tell me, call me on it so that I'm aware of it in the moment and can change it. So that's another technique. Let's see, I've got somebody typed in with focus and center yourself. I've got somebody else came in with stay focused on the positive words. Well, and they also said and negative words, and I'm going to yes and no, because if you focus on the negative words, you may actually reinforce them. So people will talk about having both lists available, and I say if you're going to have the list of negative words out, put lines through all the words so you know that that really is what you're getting away from, and instead you're better off focusing on those positive words. So you focus on the positive words. When you hear a negative, rephrase it. Practice that. Oh my gosh. Okay. All these comments are going by really fast now. So let me go back into that one. It helps to have other people do it with you. Love that. So think about it this way, Tracy. Get into the discussion group in LinkedIn and connect with some of your colleagues there and say, hey, let's plan time to talk and practice, etc., and do an exchange. So that's a great one. I'm going to mute Tracy and I'm going to unmute Beth so that she can come in. And while I'm getting Beth on live, I'm going to share, we got more comments coming in. Be aware of yourself by setting an intention. Yes, create a habit to hear yourself. Another idea is take a small notebook with you at all times, write it down. And then let's see, be very intentional and carefully listen when I'm rephrasing. This is what someone's doing. Keep the phenomenal words in front of me and have them posted in my house in various locations. Self-positive talk, yeah, absolutely helpful. So great. And Tracy, by the way, said to everyone, thank you. She's got some great ideas now. Beth, you're live. Come on in. What is your question? Are you there, Beth? Okay, so I'm showing you're live on microphone. Unfortunately, we are not hearing you. So Beth, I'm going to ask you to go ahead and type that into the question panel so that I can make sure and address it for you, because unfortunately I'm not hearing you. Let's see. And I'm going to go back earlier on. I had a question come in. What did you do to accomplish being so positive in your language, and how long did it take? So how long did it take, by the way, I'm still figuring that one out. So working on that. In terms of what did I do, all these things we're talking about, seriously, the coach training, the research, the affirmations, absolutely huge part of what I'm doing, and incredibly significant for me in terms of actually learning and using the positive language. That one's been a huge one. And then of course ongoing, the ongoing classes and reading, etc. So love that. Let's see, we've got another comment that you like the idea of posting the positives. Yes, excellent. And what else, everyone? And I'm gonna go here. You're gonna have to help me out. We got 15 minutes. We can use it, or we can simply close out. So it's up to you if you want to jump in and ask additional questions, etc. So let's see. Beth has typed in now. She was actually responding to Tracy. Oh, I love this. She writes in positive language to practice for her blogs that she's writing. So that's a great one. And Beth, you triggered another thought for me. I know people that talk about using positive words as your passwords for all the different places you log into, etc., because it forces you to use those positive words. So that's a good one. Another, it does take personal work and commitment to personal growth, releasing the old negative beliefs. So as a result, you become more positive, and our language is a reflection of where we're coming from, our beingness. So that's great. Book on affirmations. Oh, good. Glad you like the password idea. So excellent. Oh, okay. Here's the book, Permission to Succeed by Noah St. John, and it's on affirmations. So excellent. Good input and feedback. All right, everyone, what other questions do you have? What other situations do you want to discuss and get ideas for? Let's see. What do you do when your clients are crying? Okay, great question. So a couple of different things around that. First off, how intensely they're crying, of course, makes a difference. So if someone is simply teary-eyed, I'm going to give them a tissue, and of course I'm going to continue the conversation, because sometimes calling it out and doing anything different is more uncomfortable than continuing the conversation. If their crying is more intense, what I'm going to do is say, I want to respect that. I'm going to pause. I'm going to turn and focus on something else for a few minutes to give you some space. Let me know when you're ready and we'll keep talking. Or alternatively, if wherever you're at is a place where you can leave them alone and they can still have privacy, I might say to someone, I'm going to excuse myself for 10 minutes. I'm going to run to the restroom, come back. That way you have some space, and we'll continue when I get back. And I can do something like that. So keep in mind, for a lot of people, teary-eyed, that's okay. What comes to mind for me is going to a chick flick with my husband and I'm crying. He's like, oh, don't cry. And I'm like, I want to cry. I like crying sometimes. It's a good thing. So it's okay. And it's simply working with it. Another question. Oh, good. Glad that was helpful to you. Another question is, are there other positive words? Absolutely. When you go out and do your research, you can find all kinds of lists of positive words. Chances are you can even sit down and brainstorm them yourself. There are tons and tons of positive words. So excellent. Excellent. And yeah, somebody was we had a free one yesterday on conflict coaching, and some of the things we're talking about here definitely overlap. And so they shared in response to the earlier question, I say, hey, I'm going to go get a cup of coffee. Can I get you something? Or what can I bring you? And that way it's a little bit easier to give them some space on the crying. So good. Excellent. All right, everyone, what else? So I'm being asked if the slides will be available. The slides themselves, no. What we do is publish the recording of this on the YouTube channel so you can come back and watch it again. And of course, we're doing that in terms of protecting content, etc. So thank you for asking that. That tells me you like it. You got some good stuff out of it. So awesome. And what else, everybody? What other questions can we answer? What else do you want to talk about? So let's see, what questions can you ask a client to get them to rephrase their statements to the positive? So I can throw out a couple of examples. If you have a specific one, either raise your hand and I'll unmute you or type it in and I can read it and we can respond to that specifically. So for example, if a client says, I mentioned earlier, I don't want to be so stressed. Okay, if you don't want to be stressed, what do you want instead? Okay. Now, oh, here's a good example. Someone else put this in. Client wants to quit smoking. How can I phrase that in a positive way instead of using the word quit? And that is a really tough one. It does come up a lot. So a place you can go with that is to say, okay, and after you quit smoking, what's happening instead? Or you can say, how will you feel? What will you do? What will that experience be? And it may be they talk about breathing comfortably. It may be they talk about having good breath. It may be they talk about walking up or down a flight of stairs and still being at the same breathing level or heart rate. So a lot of different ways. What's essential there is you really want them saying it, because if we put the words in, then it's our words instead of being theirs. So as a coach, it's knowing when someone is talking about that negative to ask them to describe how they do want it, what they want it to be instead, how it will be instead when they create the change, and then pull from their language for that. So those are a few examples. Another one, and this may be to these earlier questions, somebody said, okay, if a client is stuck in an undesired behavior, ask them, how is that working for you? So I think you watched Dr. Phil when you type that in, and it's a great question. How's that working for you? That's really good. So awesome. Let's see. What do you say to a client who keeps saying, I don't know? I love that one. And of course, we talk about that one in class as well. If somebody says, I don't know, you say to them, okay, if you did know, what's the answer? And that's your ideal go-to. And I'm amazed how many times I do that with clients and it works. They come up with their answer. I even have some clients who, if they say to me, I don't know, immediately catch themselves now and they'll say, okay, wait a minute. If I did know, let me think, and they give me an answer. So it's gotten to the point with some people, I don't even have to ask that. Now, different approaches. If they did know, yes, my favorite, a different one. I love the reverse brainstorm technique where if somebody's stuck and they're saying, I don't know, you say, okay, let's just play with this and have some fun. What's the stupidest, dumbest, craziest idea you can come up with? What's the worst possible thing you can do? Well, what that does, a couple of things. First off, when you ask for a stupid, dumb, crazy idea, they may have a good idea and they're afraid to put it out there because they don't want to appear stupid or something. They're not sure of it. So by saying, give me a stupid, dumb, crazy idea, it gives them permission to take a risk with the idea that they kind of like. Another thing it does is if they're stuck and you say, give me a stupid, dumb, crazy idea, it gets them unstuck. Yeah, it's a stupid, dumb, crazy idea, and chances are we can start laughing about it and having fun with it. And now that they're unstuck, you can shift them. And then you say, okay, so give me not a good idea, don't give me a good idea yet, give me a mediocre idea. And then you ask for a good idea. So that's your reverse brainstorm. Another great way to approach it is to say, okay, if you went to someone else for advice and name that someone else. If you know them well enough, you may know if they have a mentor, a partner, significant other, a trusted colleague, a family member that's significant to them, whoever it is that's important to them that they're going to want advice from. Say, if you ask that person advice, what are they going to tell you? And that often gets them unstuck. Another great way to approach it is to say, okay, pretend I'm you, and that's my situation. What advice do you have for me? It's funny. It's the exact same situation, and they can give me the advice without being able to give it to themselves. And it opens the door. In essence, by asking them to give me advice, they're giving themselves advice. It's taking them out of it that helps them get there. So really, really good there. Hopefully that's helping with the client saying, I don't know. I got feedback on the earlier question that was helpful. So good, glad to hear that. And what else, everybody? What else can we answer for you? So I'm getting lots of thanks. Glad this was helpful, and thank you for those positive statements right there in the question panel. So really good. And yes, positive language. And somebody gave me the comment of it's a need. I'm going to change it. It's a choice. It's a win-win. It's something you plan on, you commit to, you're intentional about it, you will do it. So awesome. Really glad that this was helpful, everyone. I will, of course, get it loaded on YouTube. I'll get a link to the recording sent out to you. And as you've heard before, please do let us know what else we can do to be helpful. So thank you, all of you, and thanks for all those great comments and feedback. Good to hear from you. Good to have you here. It's so fun seeing all these familiar faces, or names, is probably a more appropriate way to say it. So thanks, everyone. And of course, we'll look forward to talking with you again soon.